Hi friends, and welcome back to the Meditative Aiden YouTube channel, where we talk about mindfulness and how it can help you work through the challenges and experiences of life. My name is Aiden, and in today's video we're going to talk about non-judgment. This is the first part of a series on the different virtues of mindfulness and the different characteristics of mindfulness. And the hope in this series is to give you an idea of some of the different aspects involved in mindfulness and, again, some of those virtues that are involved in it. In today's video, we're going to talk about first what kind of judgment we're talking about, what judging is. We're going to talk about why judgment can be such a difficult thing to work through, why it's a difficult experience. Then we're going to talk about an analogy that the Buddha used to help us understand what it is we're doing when we judge ourselves and our experiences. And then we're going to talk about how we can potentially break free from the cycle of judgment. So right off the bat, the thing about non-judgment and mindfulness is you can't talk about one without talking about the other. And that's the way that it works for a lot of these different virtues of mindfulness, is that mindfulness incorporates all of these different elements, all of these different virtues, and it's not the same practice or the same trait without any single one of them. And non-judgment is no exception. But what is it that judgment is? What is it we're talking about when we say we're judging things? Typically, judgment involves, forming opinions and coming to conclusions about certain experiences or beliefs or people or things or places and so on and so forth. So when you judge something, you're judging it against maybe something that's desired or expected or some standard that you're measuring it against. I know for me that even though non-judgment is such a huge practice in mindfulness, it's such an integral part of mindfulness, I have a really difficult time actually incorporating it into my mindfulness practice. I'll sit down to meditate, for example, and I'll plan out like a 30-minute session where I'm gonna sit down, meditate, have a beautiful experience, whatever. And as soon as I sit down and close my eyes, I notice that I'm distracted. And it's one of those situations where my mind is just going all over the place. And as soon as those distractions come up, I notice that immediately where my mind goes is, man, why am I so distracted? I start asking myself questions about why it is that I have so many problems with meditating. Why can't I be perfect like everyone else seems to be with meditating? On top of that, then I'll start asking myself questions like, man, why can't I be good at anything? Why do I have such a hard time with this? Why can't I get it right? And this is something that all of us experience when you have this expectation for the way that something should be, and then reality comes in and defies that expectation and violates it. And what happens is we become disappointed or frustrated. And in the case where I'm sitting down trying to meditate, when I find myself so distracted with everything, my mind running around and doing all these things, my disappointment comes because I expected a different outcome. I expected something else. So what happened is I judged the situation, I judged how I was acting, and said, I'm judging that I'm not actually meeting the expectation that I set for this meditation. The thing is, judgment is a normal component of the human experience. The reason for this lies in our survival instinct. Now, if you think back to our primitive ancestors, they had to be able to go into the environment and be able to judge different perceptions of the environment as either friendly or dangerous or threatening or potential opportunity. When they would go into these environments, the ancestors of ours that didn't have a very well-developed judgment system were the first ones that died because they couldn't see the lion sitting in the bush waiting to eat them. So this is something that stays with us to this day, this survival mechanism. We're constantly looking at the stimuli that we're bombarded with and trying to determine and judge what it is that's threatening and not threatening. This was really great for our ancient ancestors because it kept them alive and it helped us move the human species forward. You think about the people that survived were the ones that were able to go home safely and be with their families and feed them with the food that they had found. But in the modern world, with modern technology and all of the things that are involved in industry and how our human race has progressed, now we're bombarded with stimuli all the time, where our ancestors were only really having to judge when they were in the environment and away from safety. We're stuck in this little mindset even when we're in our own homes. We're stuck in this mindset of judgment. We're constantly asked to judge, do you like this song? Do you like this meal? Do you like this app? Do you like this, that, the other? And on top of that, our very demanding work lives, in especially the Western world, have made it that much more difficult because the work we do now compared to our primitive ancestors is a lot more demanding. This is especially difficult in the Western world, where we put such an emphasis on productivity, and we judge a lot of people's worth based on how much they're able to do, how much wealth they're able to accumulate, how far they're able to move up the social hierarchy, how fast they're able to run, how all these things. And in such a competitive society as the one we've developed, this survival mechanism is on judgment overload all the time. This is particularly difficult when you're trying to work through the experiences of everyday life, and especially the experiences of difficult emotions. Because what happens is you find yourself in situations where difficult emotions arise, and these judgments just come so naturally, because that animal brain is stuck there, always on that judgment mode. The Buddha taught an analogy that I think is really quite relevant to this conversation, and it's the analogy of the two darts. And in this analogy, he says that when life throws a dart at you, it's something you can't control. So if you can imagine what it feels like to stand in front of a dartboard and have someone throw a dart at you, you can imagine it's pretty painful. Don't go do that, but just imagine it. Please don't do that. It would be pretty funny. We've all seen the YouTube videos. Anyway, so the Buddha described this first dart as life experiences that are out of our control. That includes experiences such as loss, grief, natural disasters, disease, illness, and things like that, where you can't really do anything to prevent that first dart from coming. The second dart, though, is the dart we throw at ourselves. So what happens is, life is naturally throwing darts at us, and it's painful. These darts are difficult to deal with. But what happens is our interpretation of that first dart, as the Buddha described, is what causes us to throw a second dart at ourselves, causing that much more pain. So in the example where I'm meditating that I gave at the very beginning of this, the first dart that I find is that I am distracted. My mind is wandering, my natural ADD brain is just going all over the place. But it's my interpretation of that. When I sit down and I say, this sucks, man, why can't I get anything right? That perception, that response, that reaction to the first dart is that second dart. In that instance, what I was doing was taking that first dart, shoving another dart in there, and then pushing them both in. The issue with this is it causes constant negative cyclic thought patterns. So you're really just pushing yourself down a well of negativity with no way out. And I think that this is something that's actually become even more prominent since the time of the Buddha, especially in the last 100 years with the cultivation of our society. We're so self-critical and so self-defeating where, 150 years ago, people still had challenges, but in the modern world, our challenges have been inflated by the demands of society and the expectations for us to perform. What this means is that when we go into situations where judgment naturally occurs, we're more likely to judge ourselves negatively than I would say our primitive ancestors were. And there are a lot of different reasons for this. One, 400,000 years ago when the human race was beginning, or something like that, I think it was 400,000 years ago. But anyway, when the human race was beginning, our ancestors weren't walking around trying to figure out why they were depressed. Their primary focus was, I need to get food and feed my family so my family doesn't die, and then I don't die. But because of the advances of technology and the comfort we live in, and then on top of that, the demands of society and our demand to be productive and provide something to our society, we find ourselves so stretched and those judgments are so inflated. It's really important to summarize that very concisely for just a moment. The judgments that we have come from perceptions of reality. When those judgments arise, they arise from our natural animal brain, which is designed to perceive threats and judge our environment and our own personal safety to ensure that we can survive. So now the question is, with such a powerful part of our brain functioning in this way, can we break free of that? Is that something where, even though it's not just ingrained in our psyche, there are brain structures designed for that, can we get away from that? And the answer is yes. And the answer is through mindfulness. Hot trick, you never would have guessed that, huh? There's a quote by Joseph Goldstein that I really like, which applies to this situation. And in this quote, and I'm paraphrasing, he says something along the lines of, the first thing we need to ask ourselves is if this judgment is benefiting me or harming me in the present moment. And what this does, this immediate perception is saying, okay, I see my judgments, I see how I'm judging myself. Is this a good thing or a bad? What is it that this judgment is doing to me and for me? And this is kind of the first step towards mindfully approaching situations with non-judgment. Because to mindfully approach situations with non-judgment means that you are experiencing things, but you're not judging them for their worth or value or expectations. This kind of means that when you go about life, you need to let go of those expectations, as we've talked about before, of what you think should be and accept what could be. Nonetheless, what mindfulness teaches us is that there is a space where we can train ourselves to respond to stimuli so that we're not judging ourselves and pushing that second dart in. We can do this because our consciousness has power over our biology. That's really important, so important. I'm gonna say it again just because it's so important. Your consciousness has power over your biology. What this means is that your ability to have consciousness, your consciousness itself, can change the way that your biology is working. First and foremost, to prove this, there are any number of studies about the placebo effect, where just thinking that you're taking a drug, your consciousness will make changes as if the drug is in your body. This was really well illustrated by Dr. Carol Dweck. And Dr. Dweck wrote a book called Mindsight, The New Psychology of Success. And her colleagues did a lot of research on successful people and what made them successful in life. And they used a bunch of different measurements for what success was, whether that was, achieving the American dream or financial wealth or mental health and all these things. Now, the people that were able to find success in all of their studies had this thing called the growth mindset. And this growth mindset has a lot of different elements and functions in it. One thing that I learned from it is that these people that are successful go into situations with a mindset without judgment. So when these people go into situations, according to Dr. Dweck's research and all of her findings, when that first dart hits them, they obviously go, ow, that hurts. They recognize that it's there. But then they acknowledge the fact that, I've got to move on. And that's it. There's no second dart, there's no judgment, and they move forward. What this means for you is that when these experiences come up, you have the ability to change the way that you respond to that first dart. When that experience happens, if you respond to it with mindfulness and the component of mindfulness that's non-judgment, you allow yourself the freedom to experience it only as painful as it is. In addition, a lot of Dr. Dweck's findings suggested that even if you're not one of those successful people that she studied, they were able to train people to adopt that mindset to find equal success in their lives. This means that you have the ability to change the way that you perceive the world, and you have the ability to find that success. Whether that's success emotionally, success with mental health, whether that's success fiscally or so on. So to put this all together, what mindfulness teaches you through non-judgment is that when experiences occur, instead of looking at that experience and judging it as being painful or judging it as, I didn't meet an expectation, rather than judging them that way, mindfulness teaches you how to just experience it, how to just be with that experience without judging it and attaching and clinging to it. So let's use an example to kind of illustrate this, to give you a better idea of what non-judgment means in day-to-day life, because we can only talk about the theory so much until it comes to actually putting it into practice. So let's say that you're at work and you've got this project that you're supposed to finish and you don't finish it on time. Your deadline just seemed to come too soon, you were busy. Nonetheless, your project isn't finished and you might get written up for it. You might have to go sit with your boss and have one of those awful chats about how boss chats go. In that situation, the first dart is that you didn't finish your project on time. Whether that was in your control or out of your control at this point doesn't matter. The fact is that the situation hurts. And it hurts because you had this expectation of what you were supposed to do and you didn't accomplish it. So you might be feeling disappointed, frustrated, angry. You might be feeling anxious about talking to your boss or the repercussions of this. So that's the first dart, or all those sensations that are occurring. When you judge yourself for the way that you performed. When you see all those emotions, and then on top of that say, man, I'm just not a good employee. I just can't seem to fit in or get anything done wherever I go. What that does is it takes that dart, that second dart, and throws it right at you, while also pushing in the first dart that was already there and making that experience worse. On the other hand, with mindfulness, when you approach the situation, you feel all of these sensations. And with your non-judgmental awareness, you say, I see that I'm experiencing a lot of frustration and anger, and that's okay. I understand that these sensations are natural. I wish that I could have had more time to finish my project, but I know that this doesn't mean I'm a bad worker. I'm not a bad employee. And in fact, sometimes you don't even have to go through that entire narrative. Sometimes when you go through those experiences with mindfulness, that experience kind of just goes by like a cloud, if you will. What this means is that you just perceive it. You don't attach to it. You don't say anything to it. You don't involve yourself with it. You just allow the experience to be there. So when you're at work and these sensations occur, this experience happens, instead of involving yourself in those emotions, allow yourself to take a step back. Prevent yourself from judging the situation, from judging yourself and judging your experience, because those judgments are only going to make the situation worse. And the point of this isn't only to prevent you from judging negative experiences, but also positive experiences as well. Because when we judge positive experiences, what we're doing is we're creating this mindset that we always have to have that. When I say that I accomplished something great, let's say that I didn't just finish that project that my boss assigned me, but I also finished an entire another project on top of that, it's easy to feel really good about that. But when you constantly set yourself up where you always are chasing that feeling of goodness, you're setting yourself up for failure. And the reason is because you're always chasing that sensation. You're always chasing after happiness or running away from that negativity, on the other hand. And what that does is it means that all of the time you spend running in either direction is time wasted away from the present moment. It's time wasted where you could have been enjoying the beauty and serenity of the world around you, where you could have been enjoying decent conversations with your coworkers, and you could have been enjoying your job. This isn't to say that you shouldn't feel emotions. If you're feeling upset with yourself, by all means, it's okay to feel upset. It's okay to feel frustrated. But it's not okay to take those sensations and then turn them into a part of you and then beat yourself up for that and push those judgments in. Like I said, that only damages you further and puts you into a negative spiral. So kind of to recap on everything that we've talked about, judgment is when we take a situation and we judge it because it doesn't meet our expectations, or we judge it for being different, or something like that. We're forming some kind of opinion about it. Our ancient ancestors developed this survival mechanism that involved constant judgment to survive in their environment. This is really difficult to deal with in the modern era because our survival systems are always activated. There's always something going on. We're just bombarded with all this stimulus. What happens then, as the Buddha taught, when events occur, it's like a dart being thrown at you. And when you then judge that situation, you make it worse, causing yourself another dart. This leads to a cycle of negativity and disappointment and just constant frustration. Mindfulness is the perfect tool for breaking free from this cycle, and non-judgment is a central component of that. Because to go into an experience with mindful awareness means that you're going in without attachment. You're not clinging to any of the sensations, you're just bringing your awareness into that moment. And judging is clinging by forming opinions of the world around you and clinging to those opinions. As you cultivate a sense of mindfulness, this sense of non-judgment will naturally appear as you learn that when experiences occur, it's okay to just let them go and let them be. Again, this doesn't mean that you just shouldn't allow yourself to feel feelings, that you shouldn't enjoy happiness when it's there, or try to do something about your sadness. What this is saying is that when those situations occur, don't tell yourself a story about them. Don't tell yourself that you're always going to be happy or you always need to chase happiness. Or on the other hand, don't always tell yourself that you're going to be depressed, you're going to be sad and frustrated your whole life and you can never do anything right. Making those attachments is clinging, and what that does is it just sets you up for failure because you're setting expectations on reality, and reality always defies our expectations. For me, learning about non-judgment has been really hard. Like I said, it's something that I still have a really difficult time practicing to this day. The meditation experience that I talked about in the beginning of the video actually happened like a week ago. And the thing is that it's something that constantly occurs. Our ability to judge will never necessarily go away. And mindfulness isn't about extinguishing that and getting rid of the experience of judgment. Mindfulness is about learning how to just let them be, let those experiences go, and be with them. In doing so, through mindfulness, you can learn how to coexist with these emotions and these sensations and these experiences in a healthier way while embracing the present moment and the beauty of living inside of the present moment. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult because it can become really frustrating when you're constantly trying to cultivate a sense of mindfulness and these things still come up. You know, I still struggle with depressive symptoms and experiences with anxiety and frustration and anger that I don't understand. But as I've learned to cultivate mindfulness, it's helped me learn how to non-judgmentally step back from those. So instead of identifying myself with that experience of depression when it occurs, instead of calling myself a depressed person, I'm just able to sit back and experience it and just let go. All right, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. Really appreciate you tuning in. For more information, you can go check out the full blog article on meditativeaiden.com. You can also check out the Meditative Aiden Facebook page and Instagram profile. We've got plenty of awesome additional daily information and advice for you guys on there. Don't forget that you can also listen to this on your favorite podcasting platform at the Meditative Aiden Podcast. Guys, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns for me, please feel free to comment below. And remember, if you like the video, subscribe below, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And other than that, I hope you guys have a great week and I'll see you guys next time.